Every major green hydrogen project being planned right now is making a hidden bet about the future. Not just a bet on hydrogen demand, not just a bet on renewable electricity, a bet on which electrolyzer technology will still make economic sense 10 years from now. That decision is already shaping billions of dollars in infrastructure. Factories are being built, supply chains are being locked in, governments are designing subsidies around assumptions that may or may not hold by 2035. Investors are funding gigafactories, utilities are signing long-term agreements, ports are planning hydrogen import terminals. Steel producers are redesigning industrial processes around future hydrogen costs that do not exist yet. And underneath all of those decisions is one uncomfortable reality. Nobody actually knows which electrolyzer technology will dominate the hydrogen economy by 2035. The industry talks confidently about technology roadmaps. But when you look closely, many of those forecasts quietly assume perfect scaling, stable supply chains, falling electricity prices, successful material breakthroughs, and uninterrupted manufacturing expansion across multiple continents simultaneously. That is not a technology forecast. That is a civilization-scale systems gamble. And the outcome matters enormously. Because if the wrong technology assumptions get embedded into the hydrogen economy too early, projects become stranded, financing collapses, infrastructure becomes incompatible, and entire industrial strategies fail under real-world stress. This is why the electrolyzer roadmap matters so much. Not as a laboratory discussion, as an industrial survival discussion. Right now, 4 major electrolyzer pathways are competing for the future of hydrogen production. Alkaline electrolysis, PEM electrolysis, solid oxide electrolysis, and anion exchange membrane systems. Each one promises a different future. Each one has different physics, different supply chains, different strengths, different weaknesses, and different failure modes under stress. And by 2035, the global hydrogen economy may look completely different depending on which pathway scales fastest. But before looking forward, we need to understand where the industry actually stands today. Because many hydrogen conversations still confuse headlines with deployment reality. Today, alkaline electrolysis remains the most commercially mature hydrogen production technology in the world. It has the largest installed manufacturing base, the longest operating history, and the lowest current system-level capital cost for large projects. Massive Chinese manufacturing expansion has pushed alkaline deployment to industrial scale faster than most Western forecasts expected. PEM electrolysis, meanwhile, has become the technology darling of the modern hydrogen economy. Faster dynamic response, higher current density, more compact systems, better compatibility with fluctuating renewable energy, strong support from European and North American manufacturers, strong momentum from investors, and this is where the first major systems tension appears. Because alkaline and PEM are not just competing technologies, they represent 2 completely different philosophies about what the hydrogen economy will become. Alkaline assumes the future hydrogen system values durability, manufacturing scale, supply chain simplicity, and lower upfront cost. PEM assumes the future hydrogen system values flexibility, renewable integration, compact design, and operational responsiveness. Both visions may be correct, or neither may be sufficient on their own. And then there is solid oxide electrolysis, or SOEL. SOEL sits in a strange position inside the hydrogen industry. Technically fascinating, thermodynamically impressive, potentially capable of dramatically higher efficiencies when integrated with industrial heat systems, but commercially immature, expensive, and operationally complex. SOEL introduces a radically different idea into hydrogen economics. What if electricity is not the only energy input? What if waste heat, nuclear heat, industrial process heat, or high-temperature integration changes the economics completely? This is why SOEL cannot be analyzed like PEM or alkaline. It is not simply another electrolyzer design, it is an industrial integration strategy. And then finally there is AEM, a technology many people talk about as the future best-of-both-worlds solution. The promise of low-cost catalysts combined with PEM-style membranes and dynamic performance. But the reality today is far harsher. AEM remains pre-commercial. The durability problem is still unresolved at industrial timescales, and durability is everything. Because in hydrogen, technologies do not succeed because they work for weeks. They succeed because they survive for decades. This is one of the biggest disconnects between public hydrogen excitement and industrial hydrogen reality. The industry often celebrates breakthrough efficiency demonstrations or laboratory achievements, while underestimating the sheer brutality of maintaining stable operation across tens of thousands of operating hours. Electrolyzers do not live inside controlled laboratory environments. They live inside industrial systems exposed to thermal cycling, intermittent power, pressure fluctuations, contamination risks, maintenance delays, water quality variability, and economic pressure from every direction. The real question is never, can this technology work? The real question is, can this technology survive under stress while remaining economically financeable? That changes how we evaluate every roadmap projection. Because electrolyzer technologies are not competing only on efficiency, they are competing on survivability. Now, the obvious assumption many people make is that newer technologies naturally replace older ones over time. But industrial history rarely works that way. Sometimes mature technologies improve faster than expected. Sometimes advanced technologies hit supply chain walls. Sometimes physics itself imposes hidden limits. And sometimes the technology with the best laboratory trajectory loses because manufacturing ecosystems fail to scale. This is where the hydrogen roadmap becomes genuinely complicated. Take PEM, for example. PEM's future depends heavily on one critical variable, iridium. Iridium is one of the rarest industrial metals on Earth. Current PEM systems require iridium catalysts to maintain stable operation inside acidic electrochemical environments. And while manufacturers have already reduced iridium loading significantly, scaling PEM to global hydrogen infrastructure levels still creates enormous pressure on iridium supply chains. This is one of the hidden structural risks inside the modern hydrogen economy. Because the future of PEM may depend less on electrochemistry breakthroughs and more on mining constraints. That is an extraordinary systems dependency. Research teams worldwide are aggressively pursuing ultra-low iridium PEM systems. If they succeed in achieving durable operation at extremely low iridium loading, PEM's economics improve dramatically. The supply chain bottleneck weakens, manufacturing scalability improves, capital costs potentially collapse faster than many forecasts currently assume. But if those breakthroughs fail to scale commercially, PEM faces a very different future. And this is where the ReneEnergy framework becomes essential. Technology roadmaps are not destiny. They are conditional futures. The hydrogen economy is filled with if statements. If iridium loading falls, if manufacturing scales, if electricity prices decline, if financing remains available, if utilization stays high enough, if trade barriers do not fragment supply chains, if renewable deployment accelerates fast enough, if infrastructure integration succeeds. And those conditions matter more than most headline projections acknowledge. Now compare that to alkaline electrolysis. Alkaline's future is far less dependent on breakthrough science. That sounds boring. But in industrial systems, boring can become a competitive advantage. Nickel catalysts are abundant. Manufacturing processes are mature. Operational histories are deeply established. Large-scale deployment already exists. China's manufacturing ecosystem is heavily optimized around alkaline systems. This gives alkaline something extremely powerful, momentum. And momentum matters enormously in infrastructure transitions. Because once factories, labor systems, maintenance networks, suppliers, operators, and financing structures align around a technology, replacing that ecosystem becomes much harder than most technology forecasts assume. This is exactly what happened with solar manufacturing, exactly what happened with lithium battery supply chains, and possibly what is now happening with alkaline electrolysis. China currently dominates global electrolyzer manufacturing capacity, and much of that dominance is alkaline. If Chinese alkaline systems continue driving costs downward through manufacturing scale and learning curves, alkaline may remain far more competitive through 2035 than many PEM-focused narratives expect. This creates a geopolitical layer to the hydrogen roadmap. Because the future hydrogen economy may not simply be determined by which technology performs best technically, it may also be determined by which regions control manufacturing scale. And manufacturing scale is not easy to replicate quickly, especially once learning curve effects begin compounding. Now let's talk about the variable most people still underestimate: electricity. The hydrogen industry often obsesses over electrolyzer capex, while quietly ignoring the reality that electricity dominates hydrogen economics. The cost profile of electricity matters more than almost anything else. Cheap electricity can compensate for expensive electrolyzers. Expensive electricity can destroy even highly efficient systems. And this is where the roadmap becomes highly geographic. In regions with ultra-cheap renewable electricity, capex matters less relative to energy cost. In regions with expensive electricity, efficiency becomes far more valuable. In industrial regions with waste heat availability, SOEL becomes dramatically more interesting. This means there may never be one universal winning electrolyzer technology. Different geographies may converge toward entirely different hydrogen architectures. The Middle East may optimize differently from Northern Europe. Australia may optimize differently from Japan. Industrial steel clusters may optimize differently from remote renewable hubs. And this is one reason simplistic winner-takes-all hydrogen narratives are probably wrong. The future hydrogen economy may become fragmented across multiple optimal technology pathways. That fragmentation creates another hidden challenge. Standardization. If different regions optimize around different electrolyzer systems, supply chains become more complex, infrastructure interoperability becomes harder, maintenance specialization increases, and financing models become more fragmented. The hydrogen economy may not evolve like a single unified system. It may evolve like multiple overlapping industrial ecosystems. Now, this is where solid oxide electrolysis becomes fascinating again. Because SOEL may not win the general hydrogen market, but it may dominate very specific industrial environments, especially where high-temperature heat already exists. This is a critical distinction many people miss. Technologies do not need universal dominance to become economically important. They only need defensible niches. SOEL's efficiency advantage under integrated thermal conditions is real. If industrial clusters successfully integrate waste heat and electrolysis, SOEL could become highly competitive even with higher upfront capital costs, especially if electricity prices rise. Because as electricity costs increase, efficiency becomes increasingly valuable. That creates another conditional future. Now layer artificial intelligence and data center growth into this picture. Because one of the biggest emerging forces in energy systems is the explosion of electricity demand from AI infrastructure. Massive data centers require stable power. Grids are already under stress in multiple regions. Utilities are racing to secure generation capacity. Transmission bottlenecks are growing. And suddenly, the competition for cheap electricity becomes even more intense. This matters directly for hydrogen, because hydrogen projects are not competing for electricity in isolation anymore. They are competing against AI infrastructure, electric vehicles, industrial electrification, heat pumps, battery storage systems, semiconductor manufacturing, and broader grid decarbonization. This creates a hidden economic pressure that many hydrogen roadmaps still underestimate. The future hydrogen economy may not be constrained primarily by electrolyzer technology. It may be constrained by who can secure enough low-cost electricity to operate competitively. And if electricity becomes the real bottleneck, then electrolyzer efficiency suddenly matters far more. That could strengthen SOEL in industrial integration environments. It could strengthen PEM in high-value flexible grid balancing applications. Or it could reinforce alkaline in regions capable of deploying massive low-cost renewable generation with high utilization. Again, the roadmap becomes conditional. And then there is another issue almost nobody talks about enough: water. Hydrogen roadmaps often focus on electricity while quietly assuming water availability is trivial. But large-scale hydrogen deployment requires enormous volumes of purified water. In water-stressed regions, which often also happen to have excellent solar resources, this becomes a serious infrastructure challenge. Desalination can solve part of the problem, but desalination adds cost, energy demand, permitting complexity, brine management issues, and additional infrastructure dependencies. This is another reason hydrogen systems cannot be analyzed as isolated technologies. Every electrolyzer exists inside a larger infrastructure ecosystem involving power, water, transmission, pipelines, ports, storage, permitting, labor, maintenance, and industrial demand. The systems layer always returns. Now here is perhaps the most important realization of all. The hydrogen economy may evolve far slower than many current forecasts assume. That possibility changes everything, because many electrolyzer cost projections rely on massive manufacturing expansion. But manufacturing learning curves only work if deployment continues accelerating. If projects stall due to financing pressure, infrastructure delays, grid constraints, weak hydrogen demand, or policy instability, then cost reductions slow dramatically. Gigafactories become underutilized, supply chains weaken, capital investment slows, and suddenly the projected 2035 cost curves look very different. This is why the hydrogen transition is not just a technology challenge, it is an execution challenge. And historically, execution is where many energy transitions become far messier than early projections suggest. Now, if we step back and look honestly at the evidence, The future by 2035 probably looks something like this. Alkaline remains dominant in massive industrial deployments where cost, durability, and manufacturing scale matter most. PEM expands aggressively in renewable coupled systems, distributed hydrogen production, and dynamic grid balancing applications. SOEL establishes specialized industrial niches tied to heat integration. AEM continues developing but likely remains early stage commercially. In other words, no single technology fully wins. The hydrogen economy becomes technologically plural. And that outcome may actually be healthier, because diversified technology ecosystems are often more resilient under system stress than economies dependent on a single dominant architecture, especially in energy transitions. The final lesson here may be the most important one of all. The future of hydrogen will not be decided by electrolyzer efficiency alone. It will be decided by the interaction between electricity systems, mining systems, manufacturing systems, financing systems, trade systems, infrastructure systems, industrial demand systems, AI-driven energy demand, water systems, and geopolitical systems. Hydrogen is not simply an energy technology story. It is an industrial civilization story. And by 2035, the technologies that survive may not be the ones with the best headlines today. They may be the ones capable of surviving the real-world collisions coming next. Because in hydrogen, the technology roadmap is never just about the technology. It is about which systems survive reality. If you are modeling hydrogen projects with commissioning dates between 2028 and 2035, H2 Hub by ReneEnergy provides tools to run scenario analysis across alkaline, PM, SOEL, and future cost assumptions using real electricity pricing, utilization profiles, and financing conditions. The link is in the description.